All right, welcome everyone. This is an exciting day. We've been waiting for this episode for a long time. Uh, Here at Mostly Star Wars, we're going to cover Andor, but I'm not joined with my regular assortment of hosts with Quinton
Hello.
and Josiah.
Hello there.
And I just before we get started, I just wanted to remind everyone, uh, if you're listening to us later on the podcast, we do these shows live on Twitter. So if you want to join the conversation, you can do that there. All right.
Well, also
What
we
else?
should preface this with a spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the show yet, I do recommend watching it before you listen to this show. Obviously, I recommend watching it.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
we will be talking spoilers here. So if you haven't seen it yet, maybe wait till afterwards to view the show.
All right. Well, let's get into it, guys. We have these episodes were so amazing. It was such a different feel, and it feels like a special place. Like it feels, I don't know, it's different, but it also feels like Star Wars in the fact that it feels lived in, and just the aspect you actually get to spend some time with some of these characters, because the first two episodes are kind of a little slow, even though it's funny how they feel slow even though they're still almost 40 minutes long each, and it takes that whole time, but it's so good. And once you get to episode 3, it's like everything is is moving real fast, and it's is this we're going to get into some of the themes and stuff, but I just kind of wanted to share my initial thoughts. It is something different in Star Wars, and I think a lot of people have been wanting something a little more gritty in Star Wars, and so I think this is a really good start. I don't know if it'll stay this dark. I don't know if it'll stay this slow either. It almost feels like it might start moving a little bit faster. But from what I understand is that the show is separated in, because we're getting 12 episodes in this season, and the show is separated into 3 episode arcs. And so that's what we got with these first 3 episodes. And so the next episode, I wouldn't be surprised to see some time jumping going on between these next episodes, just because everything that I've read is that, like, there's kind of separate stories, and so this was the first story, and you could really feel the beginning of something here, and it's like the beginning of the rebellion, and it was just so cool. You guys can go ahead and share your thoughts real quick, and then
Well, I did feel like it very much kind of felt like you could see that it's obviously the same people who were creating Rogue One were working on this. You can kind of feel that down to earth aspect in the filmmaking that they have, and I really do like that the intro right off the bat, the Andor with the sun rising on the planet and the turning into the like a form of the Rebel Alliance logo.
yeah, it was. I like the symbolism there, because that's what a lot of Star Wars is. That opening logo is the dawning on the planet, and then it turns into the Rebel Alliance symbol, and so it's just like symbolizing the dawn of the rebellion.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think what both you guys said, I totally agree with both of you guys. First, I just want to kind of do a shout out to the chat. We had Send It O'Reilly immediately jumping in here. He was excited also about these episodes. He says, finally an episode where I'm prepared for it. So was able to watch all 3 episodes. That's exciting. Also, Samuel Allen, thanks for being here. Always your support and commenting on our videos. Huge shout out to you as well. But yeah, I totally agree as far as like the pacing goes. I love action, like, action movies, shows, things like that. So the first few episodes for me, um, it was definitely really slow for me. And it was funny because, obviously as Star Wars fans, you're super excited. All three of us were like, the minute it drops, we're in there and ready for it. And so I was kind of just like way overhyped, I feel like, for the tone and the story of the first episode. I was kind of just like, yeah, let's go. And then I'm just kind of like sitting here and it's just like real slow and following characters walking around and, slow conversations and things like that. But yeah, definitely, like you were talking about, like the 3 episode arc, I feel like it was a really good story. As far as like time jumping, I do definitely feel that's going to happen. We're going to be jumping forward, but I do love the way that they implemented the jump backwards, right? When they
Yeah,
were doing the
the two.
flashbacks, like, because there's really two different ways they could have done it, right? They could have done a complete episode and gave us what they wanted us to see about him as a child, and then tie it in with the next episodes. Or the other way, in which they decided to go with, is basically they are giving the, like, basically background of why he is the way he is and the choices that he's making concurrently with the story, which is really cool because it keeps us as the audience, the viewer, it keeps us in kind of suspense as to little details of his past and how they're kind of correlating with his current decisions. And so I think, like what you said, it was kind of crazy how the first 2 episodes, by the end of the second episode, I was like, oh, maybe this is just how the show is going to be. And then the third episode, I was like, okay, I'm in. Like, I'm 100% in. Like, this is what I wanted to see. You got like like spies and espionage and action and, things blowing up and, that's just legitimate action. You have legitimate fear for characters that you've only met, a couple episodes prior. You care when people are getting injured and killed, things like that, captured. And it's really giving you like a sense. And I wanted to mention one thing Tyler said. He said that he thought it was like real special. And like, I don't know if I would go with the word special. Like, when people say like, hey, what era of Star Wars or what planet would you like to live on? It definitely wouldn't be this. Like, I don't want to live in this time. Like, I feel like it's like, it totally is. It's like a, you know all the people are just so oppressed, and they're scared, and they're just living like meager lives, like barely getting along, and while the ruling class is pillaging and just like smashing them down into the dirt. And so I think this definitely was like a unique side of Star Wars, and this is what we wanted to see. And I think they're playing it off perfectly. You totally feel that the empire is horrible, and it's not just the Skywalkers that are being affected by the empire, but it's all of these middle class to lower class people that are just living horribly based on the empire's rule.
Mm-hmm.
I like. So I kind of want to let's start getting into it, because that the very beginning was like the first couple scenes were amazing. Like, you totally got almost like a Blade Runner feel at the very where he's downtown, and the neon lights, and
Yeah, it was. I feel like it was kind of definitely a like an. This whole series has kind of that 1980s sci-fi feel to it, but like the nitty gritty side of sci-fi. And
Mm-hmm.
people always said that it was going to be a darker show, right? And then the very first scene you see, it's dark and raining. Like, how much darker is it out when it's raining? With the cloud cover, no stars. Like, it just
Mm-hmm.
started out as dark as possible.
right.
We may be having some technical
Yeah,
difficulties.
yeah. Just keep going.
Okay. But I think so. Definitely getting like we can just kind of start back at that initial episode if that's what you guys kind of want to do. But yeah, I love the rain coming down, and it's just immediately it almost kind of reminded me a little bit of Camino, right? Like Obi-Wan like walking into
Mhm.
Camino, like with the rain and it's dark, and like he goes into the building, but there's rain still, like he's like drenched, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like super white and clean on the inside, and you kind of immediately, before you even know who they are, kind of realize that there's some people who think they're better than him, right? Kind of like right off the bat. And
Yeah, the guards.
and then it was definitely an interesting start, like where he was, kind of what was happening. It definitely kind of threw me off as far as like Star Wars. It's an area and conversations that aren't usually talked about in Star Wars. So it was kind of just like, whoa, this is going to be a different show.
Hmm. And it kind of had that connection even to, I'd say, to Solo, where it has that like
Mm,
long walkway into the city, right? Kind of like that spot
yeah.
in Solo where they're doing that speeder chase.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, sorry, apparently I was having an echo, so I'm just trying to figure out what was going on with that. I don't know if it's gone. Can you guys? Is it still echoing?
I'm not hearing
I'm
anything.
Echo.
Echo in here.
That line is
Little
gets
Bad
me every
Batch
time.
joke.
It gets me every time. I love it.
Okay, sounds good to me. I think it's better now. So,
All right.
yeah. So that first line of, because he's going into the bar or brothel or whatever, and looking for his sister, and those two guys just want to feel important. They want to hustle him, and I just when they started to harass him after he leaves, I just I guess I should have, based on Rogue One, but I did not see it ending like that. And
Yeah.
one thing I like is how good it is, how they filmed it in such a way, because you can like see it in his eyes that he's
Mm-hmm.
once he kind of realizes, he's almost in shock the whole time,
Yeah.
and he's just like
Mm-hmm.
doesn't even know what he's doing, and especially after he actually shoots him straight in the face, and you can see his eyes as he kind of starts to walk away. And so it's just, and it was like chilling. You're just like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a different Star Wars show.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got
Yeah.
the feeling right away.
Mm-hmm.
So that was yeah. Well, yeah, he so let's send it says he had no choice but to do what he did. And yeah, because when he's sitting there begging, saying, I'll say he fell, it's like, okay, once I'm gone, you're gonna say whatever gets you
Yeah.
yeah, you know, he's not,
He's not gonna lie once he's not in danger anymore.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, he really had no choice. It's just a dark moment.
Mm-hmm.
But it just made the whole, and that was just like an interesting way of starting off the show, because I'm pretty sure I have to watch it again, but is that part played before in the first episode, played before the actual intro? I think it might be the one.
No,
It doesn't.
no. The intro is the very first thing, and then
Okay,
you go into that.
but
Then you get him flying away in his Y-wing looking ship. Looks like a
Mm-hmm.
like a freighter with some Y-wing engines strapped to the side of it. Kind of
Yeah.
had that feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was and the next thing in B2 Emo, I just think
I
that's the
really-
funniest. That's funniest name.
I really like the music that plays when you see him stroll through the streets early in the morning. Just that kind of lighthearted, upbeat, just do kind of just awesome music. And then the dogs come and one pees on him, thinking he's like a fire, because he kind of hunches down, looks like a fire hydrant, and then of course he has to shock him. So that's like
Right?
true droid defense,
Yeah.
showing his R2 side there. I really like that droid. And I like the seeing him in the flashbacks when you see him like when he was probably a lot newer and was
Yeah.
functioning properly, wasn't stuttering, didn't have power supply issues. I can lie for you today. I am fully charged. Oh, that's 2 lies. I might need to go back and recharge.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lying takes extra effort for him. That is just like
Mm-hmm.
it takes more power for him to lie. It's just an interesting.
It's like, yeah, he's going against his programming to lie, so it's like harder for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I don't know. I just love that scene, and just the music is so. It's different than, like I say, regular Star Wars music, but I think it fits really well.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, he was good.
the music, especially, I love the percussions at the end of episode 2, and you can totally tell the way they're the emphasis of it, that you knew that episode 3 was going to get moving. The
Yeah.
the music is really well done. It's Star Wars, but it's like just like the show, the music is grittier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's just an interesting way to put it. Yeah. Send It says he thought the music was great. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It throughout the thing. I mean, music is just one of those things. I think that is Star Wars. There's so much into the music, that music is so important, even in a show or anything in Star Wars, to make it feel like Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And for anybody just popping in, I saw Purple Haze there. Thanks for jumping in. Appreciate you. We had already posted a big spoiler warning. If you haven't seen all 3 episodes, we're going to be talking about all of them. So yeah, definitely go check it out and watch those episodes if you haven't before you watch us.
Yeah, that's probably smart. I liked the bits that kind of had the synth music that gave it a little bit of a Blade Runner feel. Yeah, it did. I kind of touched on that just a minute. Just the imagery with all the neon and lighting and the dark, rainy scene in the beginning scene. It definitely felt a little Blade Runner ominous. So, I liked another thing I liked from like the first episode is what was his name? Cyril Karn, the officer who wants to. Well, he's like, 2 people were murdered. He needs to be brought in, and all justice needs to be done and everything. And I actually think that this is an incredibly interesting character, really, because you can kind of see like he is one of those that's a little bit more radical, and I loved what Chief Hine said to him when he was talking about what happened, and he's like, I know these guys. One was demoted for basically doing the same stuff, it sounded like. But his line was so interesting. And it was like, these cops let a small amount of power. Okay. Okay. What he calls is regrettable misadventure. That's what he called it. I was like, oh, that's great. But he says he said they were, Karn said they were murdered. And he goes, no, they were killed in a fight. He says they were in a brothel, which we're not supposed to have, the expensive one, which they're not supposed to be able to afford, drinking Revnog. I was like, is that a eggnog style drink?
I don't know, but it sounds good.
Which they're not supposed to allow. Both on the job, which is he says, which is a dismissible offense. They clearly harassed the wrong person. It's and then so his next line is he's saying that he needs to, or he's going to have a meeting with the Imperial, with the Empire, and like an Imperial council or whatever. It's just oversight,
like check in or whatever.
Yeah. And he was basically saying that, you know, when we talk about crime rate, we need to be, he uses the word brevity, but basically he's trying to tell him that they need to basically tell the Empire that there's not much going on here. Otherwise, the Empire will be all over that planet and they'll be under Empire control instead of the corporation. And so that's what he's trying to tell him. Karn doesn't get it, so he goes on this vendetta to find Cassian, which is still his character is super interesting to me, because you, especially once you get to like the last episode, and you can kind of, when he's starting to realize what's happening, everything that's happened of him following, and as a speeder blows up and people have died. And he's kind of almost like, I wasn't expecting to get into this. I didn't want it to get this real. I was just looking for a murderer. And but I found what was super interesting is because you could think that for someone like that, this might radicalize him to being, we need the Empire, we need to put control on these people. These are bad people. They need to be controlled. And you could almost see, whereas you might think first that what he was doing was wrong, but it could almost to him prove that he's doing the right thing, which is kind of interesting way to look at it, because as a character, he's not really wrong looking for a murderer. Those guys harassed Cassian, yeah, but it was still wrong to kill them. And so he's not really wrong for trying to find a murderer. And so it's kind of interesting take where it's like he's the bad guy of the show, but he's not entirely in the wrong. And
Yeah, I do think
it's just an interesting
like
take on a character.
Yeah, his character is super interesting. And I'm kind of curious to see where we go from here, especially if there's like time jumps and things like that. Because I like the way that they portray him, and then the way that they portray like his coworkers, and maybe a similar status as him, and then like his boss, he's nothing like them. So that's what's really interesting, is he was able to get to where he was and be nothing like anyone else around him. So like that was really interesting. So it'd be kind of cool to or kind of figure out how was he able to go through all this without seeing the bad side. He thought that they were always good, and that anyone who did anything against them is bad. So somehow he felt that way, whereas the guys at the beginning who Cassian ended up killing, they knew that they were bad, and they did bad things or whatever, so they understood the bigger picture. Yeah, that they had the power and they could do whatever they want, right? And somehow this guy doesn't feel the same way. So that is kind of interesting, like you said, like after everything happened, I feel like the way that they've been portraying his character, that he's going to continue and double down on his beliefs versus saying, oh, okay, well, yeah, I guess I should have never even tried. I feel like he's going to double down and then even be more on a vendetta against Cassian.
Yeah, I completely see that. I think I haven't really watched a lot of the trailers just for spoilers, but I have heard that, yeah, he is going to be start working with the Empire, if not come Imperial.
Hmm.
And so that, yeah, I'm sure he's gonna have some kind of vendetta against Cassian.
Mm-hmm.
And so I loved, kind of moving on. I loved, like here I kind of touched on it, but the mixing of the two stories, the then and now. And one thing that was interesting that we've never ever seen in a Star Wars show, they said 5 BBY. They
Mhm.
actually dated the show. Basically,
Yeah.
every other show we've been like, well, where does it kind of stick in the timeline? You know, is it could be here, it could be, and so it was so interesting to actually like see a date. Not only that, but they also basically canonized the BBY dating system.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I mean,
Uh,
I think it kind of fits though, because this story is supposed to be like, I mean, like gritty and real, and they kind of went with the Rogue One theme of showing and naming the planets that they're on, like it's the same font and everything, like it looks exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
all right, did you lose your thought there?
No, that was it.
Or? Okay. Um,
Great, thanks.
that's
Cool.
it. Sounded like
Not
you
a
just
very important thought.
stopped like mid sentence.
That's all you had to say? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Uh,
All
so
right, guys.
Colin
Bye. That's
says,
all I had to say.
I'll say, I'll say Cassian has some got your back kind of friends. Yes.
Except for Tim.
I know, that's exactly what I was thinking when I read
You know,
Kalani's comment. I
oh
was like,
my
poor
goodness.
Tim.
I
Dang,
actually
Tim.
love the show. This is one of the reasons why this show is so good, because Tim, as you know, spoilers obviously, he gets shot. He dies. But to me, I was like, where it was not everyone like, no, 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 not Tim, no, don't shoot him, because you realize, yeah, he kind of stabbed Cassian in the back, but also he didn't really, he, he wasn't a bad guy because of it. That doesn't make him a bad guy. He made a mistake, and it was like he's just an imperfect human. He wasn't a bad guy, and so it was kind of like, no, just because you kind of feel for those other characters. You feel for Bix. She was mad at him, but she didn't want him to die. You can
Yeah.
make mistakes and you can get upset at your loved ones, but it doesn't mean they're bad people or anything. So
Well, I don't even know if I would say he made a mistake. I mean, we had talked about it earlier, with Karn. This guy, he already thought was a little shady and weird and putting his, kind of girlfriend in dangerous situations, things like that.
mhm.
Then he finds out, wow, all my suspicions are right. This guy's not only like, shady, but he's a murderer. So
Yeah,
then he tells the authorities, hey, I know where the murderer who you're looking for is. So like really the whole thing all the way across, if you can kind of put yourself in his situation, like, oh man, my girlfriend or the girl that you're trying to date, whatever, is talking to this guy you already don't like. And then you find out he's a murderer, like even
yeah.
more so you're like, yeah, this guy was bad the whole time.
And so really he was just trying to protect her. And
Hmm.
so that's why I was like, uh it was just kind of, you didn't want him to die. I didn't want him to die. I was shocked when it happened, and I didn't feel like, oh, he betrayed him. He got what was coming to him. That's not at all how I felt. I was just like, no,
Yeah.
that I just, because again, he was just, yeah, like you said, just in his mind, what he did was right, and realistically, based on the information that he had, it was right.
Hmm.
And so it's just kind of an interesting look at it. And but I wanted to touch on like the two different timelines we're looking at, because you
Mm-hmm.
see Casa in uh, Canary, and that's a real interesting stuff that they've done there, because a lot of people think that there's mistakes, but I'm kind of on the side that there's no way they made that mistake.
Which
Bec-
mistake?
because she calls the officers that are dead there that they killed, she calls them Republic, but they
Mm.
clearly have the Separatists logo on their uh, uniform.
Uniforms. Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, there's no way they made that mistake. There's something about this. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see more of that story almost, because what they were saying is Canary was a weapons, or what is it, a chemical weapons disaster, and the whole planet was basically killed. And
It was
I've
well, it was
seen
a mining issue. It was mining.
and I've seen theories that basically state that the reason they're all kids is because the adults couldn't, whatever was released into the atmosphere, their bodies couldn't fight it, whereas the stronger immune system of the younger people were able to fight. That's why they're all wearing clothes that are too big for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Here's another thing.
that's
Is
why
that
those were
so?
humans that were green laying on the ground when they had their masks off from the ship, I believe.
So in the show, they say Canary is mid-rim, abandoned after Imperial mining disaster.
Yeah.
It said mining, everyone died. Abandoned and considered toxic. Imperial prohibition. But then, are they? I wonder if Imperial records like that are saying that whatever was Republic was actually Imperial. Because if that happened during Republic times
Mhm.
or Imperial, well, think what.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure his back there,
But
the
how
then
old is
story.
Cassian?
I would, I mean, I'm guessing. I don't know for sure, but I would guess close to Rogue One. He's about 30.
That might put him. That'd put him. I feel like
You
he
mean
looks. I mean,
25,
I guess they
25 to
don't say an
30?
age, so he could be. He could be somewhere near 10 years old in the flashback years. But
Oh well, I was imagining he would be 6.
Yeah, that's what Kalani was saying too. Is that the character doesn't look 6. Like, there's no way
yeah,
he's 6.
I don't
The
know.
the, the
Has a
actor.
pretty big boy. Well, yeah, actors are always going to be older, like
Yeah.
especially kid actors. They're going to be 5 years older than what they're portrayed because they can handle the acting better and things like that. But
And Kalani says the little girl looks 6. So, but I mean, I take it as, because one, you have the Separatist logo, and she says Republic. So I'm assuming that this flashback was before or during the Clone Wars.
mm-hmm.
Sometime during the Clone Wars.
But then if the mining disaster happened and all the adults are dead, why does it say it was an Imperial mining disaster?
That's also an interesting point. I think maybe you might be onto something that just the
The Imperial are classifying old records as anything Republic related as Imperial related.
yeah, that could be.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
actually, no, I'm just kind of like thinking more about like the age thing, and like, he could be something like 8, or around there. And because all I'm thinking is when he's saying that he's been in it since he was 6 years old, like there's two ways of looking at it. One, if we're talking about, some sort of event that possibly killed all the adults, including his parents, he could have said that he was in it since then, which could have been a year, 2 years prior to this moment that we're jumping in on his story. But I feel like this is like the first moment where he was actually actively involved in a situation, because they didn't even really want him to go. He's like too young, and they're like making fun of him that he's too young. So I feel like this moment was when he first was like initiated into a fight or a battle, like actually, actively doing something, which would make more sense to when he was saying later he's been doing, being in it since he was 6.
Yeah,
But yeah, hard to say.
But it's also
mean-
possible that's just something he said in the heat of a moment.
yeah, and it's not necessarily
He just
taken
made it up.
literally, but he
Yeah.
probably could be exaggerating. He's saying that I take the line as I've been in this fight for a long time. You started, because he's saying it to Jin, who basically has been in this fight for a week and a half now, or something like that.
But not
Where-
really.
And
She's been
so-
in it since she was a little girl too.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind
Yeah,
of.
but she stopped for a while and gave up on it.
And she
Not
reluctantly did the mission.
only
to
after
start-
she was the best. Only after she was the
Best
best
fighter Saw had.
freedom fighter.
So, but yeah, I just think maybe he's not necessarily being literal, but just basically saying, I've been in this fight for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So Kaloni says, that's a good point, Josiah. They have a whole little system set up clearly before we see him in the flashback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the kids have probably been living on their own for a while.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they already like have like chosen leaders, if you want to say that. And I guess, yeah, like they have like, routines, or okay, if something like this happens, this is what we're gonna do type situation. They're definitely not like all scared, So yeah.
Mhm.
One thing I thought was interesting is I've seen on the internet that on like Twitter or something that a lot of people were tweeting that Disney Plus was glitching because there was no subtitles for the Canary.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, nope, because even if you turn subtitles on, it just says speaking Canary.
Yep, exactly. I
you're
did the
not-
same thing.
You're not supposed to be able to decipher. That's kind of the point. And someone
Mhm.
brought up another point. If this is like a remote, I think maybe you had talked about it, Josiah, that Cassian has a different accent than anyone that's ever been in Star Wars. So clearly, in Star Wars, he's from somewhere different.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely a rare place because he's speaking
Yeah.
Canary. I thought I saw someone else saying that basically the world of Star Wars doesn't know what Canary sounds like because it's just such a small. It's not really a recognized language in Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why there's no subtitles. It's just kind of fun. They put up little fan theories of just why there's no subtitles for a couple speaking parts.
But yeah, and I think that they, even within the episodes, they make that pretty clear by, most people don't even know where it is. They made it a point for people to not even know the planet. And then the people that do know the planet, they're like, yeah, well, who's from there? Like, who's actually from there?
Yeah.
So I think like they definitely played that up well, that like you said, he's there's not very many of them. So also when they said, when they're putting out, like a APB on him or whatever, like basically that it's the same thing. It was super rare to have somebody from there, let alone to commit a crime. So it'd be really easy to find someone because there's not many of them.
Even though his actual record says from Fest.
Yeah.
I like the what was it, the bus manager, I would call him, when he's trying to get a ticket to get a flight off of the planet. I think it's near the end of episode 2, and they're like, yeah, see, he hasn't heard of it too. You're talking about Canary. And it was like it was just kind of an interesting, because these are the little snippets that build the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you might not think of it much, but these are like the little snippets that obvious, and then you all get the idea that yes, there's no one's even heard of the planet, let alone knows someone from there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
so
I
it's
think we
just,
should touch on the chat real quick. So Samuel Allen said, "Don't forget Saw dumped Jin around this time," and then
hmm
Kalani said, "LOL, I was about to type the same thing." And yeah, that is interesting. And so like once you're, I feel like as time goes on, more and more people are gonna like pin down these timelines even to the specific episodes. If there is time jumping, like more time jumping forward into the future. But yeah, that is interesting because if if you think about some of these moments where Cassian, obviously we know, but he joins up, right? Um,
hmm
in the beginning phases of the rebellion and things like that, and maybe whatever starts happening around this show and around Cassian is something that makes Saw say, okay, like this is like too dangerous for Jin because we know like who her father is and what he's doing, type situation. So, and like we had talked about before in Rogue One, when Cassian and Saw saw each other, there was something there. So yeah, we might end up somehow in this show kind of seeing why maybe Saw, basically, whatever, however you want to look at it, but tried to put her into hiding or dumped her, abandoned her, whatever, at the age of 16, right? I
hmm
think they said. And then if all of those things kind of mesh together, if there's something in the show that Cassian starts being a part of that leads to Saw believing that Jin's in danger.
yeah, that would be an interesting idea. And I just was thinking about that as you're saying that, and I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure we're gonna get something with Saw, right?
Mm-hmm.
Saw's Forrest Whitaker's already confirmed as at least having a cameo, and so I was almost interested in what if, because if we're gonna stay in this timeline, if we don't jump ahead,
Mm-hmm.
uh, this is about, yeah, like Samuel Allen pointed out that right when he dumped her, what if this is like right before he dumped her and we get a cameo where she's there with him?
Oh shoot, that'd be cool.
I
Oh
mean,
man.
uh, she's probably still young enough. She could, with a little, they could make her look like 16 again.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That would be a real interesting one. This this show, we haven't even really got into episode 2, but
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at your notes, Quinton, and it just popped out to me. Is it purple or was it blue ramen?
I'm pretty sure it looked purple.
It was.
It's gonna be
Pretty sure
like
it
the
looked purple.
dress,
I
Some
saw
people see one color.
it. I seen Twitter is
Mm.
like, when can we get the blue ramen at Galaxy's Edge?
Yeah. Oh, wait, I'm sure it's coming.
I like some of that stuff is like it's clearly just a takeout box he's eating out of too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now here's another interesting thing I wanted to talk about. Uh, what? Oh, let's see. I need to find his name. Oh, sorry, bear with me here. Luthen Real, the
Oh
recruiter,
yeah.
the rebel recruiter. What is he carrying? What is that staff that he carries that he uses like a walking stick, but it looks very much like a lightsaber and even retracts into the hilt like a lightsaber?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I
It
was,
is an interesting weapon.
yeah, when I first saw it, I'm like, what is that? Is that like almost like a Vibrasword kind of thing, like from Knights of the Republic? Or
Mm-hmm.
something that, but they've designed it so it can retract, and it's basically just a metal staff, so he can almost use it like a lightsaber and just beat people with or something. I, it was just interesting because the reason I didn't think too much of it at first until they specifically showed the scene of him holding it up and retracting it into its hilt.
Mm-hmm.
And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, we need more information here. I need what is
Yeah.
this thing?
I feel like they showed too much of it to not bring it up, but you also did have like on Solo, you had like those little like daggers or whatever. You know, they
Yeah,
were
like the
basically like little lightsaber daggers or whatever. So it could be something along those lines. I feel like this is totally a weapon that Rey would have made. Like she could have like, you know, like enhanced her staff, you
yeah,
know,
right.
and things like that. But yeah, it had lots of different abilities, and I do wonder, you know, another side thing just because, you know, of the whole, you know, Star Wars universe, if the metal is something special, you know, in it too. Like
Beskar.
is it just like, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is it a Beskar staff? You know, like that'd be pretty sweet too.
Maybe he's prepared for an Inquisitor.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was super interesting, and we need more information on it. Like you specifically showed it that we need to see more of it.
Yeah.
Sendit says that he almost thought that he was blind because he thought maybe he was using it a little bit like a walking staff, but I don't think
He
he was.
doesn't ever touch the ground. He does it. He just holds it with it out in front of him, almost like, "Hey, I have a weapon. Don't try to attack me, people of this city."
I feel like one
Like,
moment when it was showing him walk across like the sand, I remember he was kind of like sticking it in the ground, kind of.
Yeah, but it
But
was more like a walking stick, not like a out in
yeah,
front kind of
yeah, he
thing.
wasn't like doing like the seeing eye thing for sure.
And so yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. Also,
hmm
I know we were gonna bring this up, but actually, I'll let Q bring it up. You want to talk about the blaster?
oh, just they talked about not doing like the creator. What's his name?
Tim
Tony
Gilroy.
Gilroy.
Tony Gilroy.
Talk about not like his whole plan. No fan service. This wasn't a fan service show. This is something he was creating, and there was no fan service. And then they go and give Cassian Kyle Katarn's blaster pistol.
From Jedi Knight,
you-
Jedi Outcast.
Yeah, did you
Oh,
ever play that game, Josiah?
Yeah, I did.
It's the
That's
first
funny.
blaster that you get. It's his blaster.
Yeah, you start off with it's his blaster,
Wow.
and it's a unique Easter egg because in old legends, Kyle Katarn is the one that stole the Death Star plans.
Mm.
So there's that kind of connection there.
hmm
But it's also he was also kind of that same roguish kind of character that Cassian
Yeah.
is, and
hmm
I don't know. I
Kyle
saw it. And I
Katarn
was
is
just
Kyle Katarn is one of those characters we need back in Star Wars
right.
in some way or another. He is such an interesting character because he's always, well, should I be a Jedi? Nah, I don't want to be a Jedi. That's too much work. I guess I'll be a Jedi now. I need the galaxy needs me to be a Jedi for this week.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it's one of those things like it just a video game memory from when I was a kid that they're doing it. I'm like, that's totally, it's got to be fan service. I mean, not necessarily fan service, but an Easter egg, right? Like that is something to pick out.
I think that I saw an article that mentioned about the fan service stuff, and it was saying that it wasn't going to be like just thrown in there. It had to be a purpose. And your connection there, saying that Kyle Katarn was the one who stole the one in Legends, those connections work. And so the fan service makes sense. It's not. And the funny thing is, again, we kind of talked about this is good fan service because if we know it, we saw it, we're like, oh, that's awesome. But no one else noticed that. No, if you're just a casual fan
viewer.
and you don't dig into this stuff or even play the video games or stuff, you didn't even notice it. But you don't need to notice it. He just has a blaster.
Yeah,
It's not something
That's
that
kind of-
that takes away from
That's a lot
Be
of how I
like,
felt they did it in Rogue One too. Was a lot of the little things here or there were awesome to those who knew it, but in no way took away from the story that was being told.
Hmm.
mhm.
The Hammerhead Corvette, seeing the ghosts there, the actual footage of Red and Gold Leader and their actual voice lines,
Hmm.
just fit. It fits perfectly without being thrown in fan service.
So I love, uh, speaking kind of a fan service, I love Star Wars junkyards because you can
Mm-hmm.
always pick out little things. Kind of the junkyard, like is our thumbnail there of him walking through it there. Which that's the scene at the end of episode 2 where you hear the loud drums, and it was clearly like the drums were getting at where we're getting moving here. This is where the show's about to take off, and it was.
Hmm.
But you get through the junkyard and you see the ships, you see the Y-wing in the background of the junkyard dogs, the all the different ships and stuff. I just like looking around. This is another thing I thought that this show did, just like Rogue One. It's the scale. You get some good looks at the city. You get some good looks at the equipment that they're working on, and the bigger facility in the background.
Hmm.
I also thought those the troop transports, like how tiny they are, that was like so awesome. It was kind of hilarious. Everyone's packed in together.
Hmm.
Well,
Uh,
that spaceship that the officers are using to travel to this planet, was that not straight out of like 1980s sci-fi? Way more than that. Like with it really gave me like an Aliens feel with the uh the drop ships that go to the ground, like tucked in, like into the. You can see the design how they're in there, but then just like that squared off look, like almost like just a pyramid flying in space.
just a
Did you not get
pyramid
that
flying in
same?
space. Yeah, it was. It's definitely a different look. And it was pretty cool because it was obviously just a carrier for those little pods for the little transport, and there was
I mean, it's got big cannons on it.
they only used
The
3 of
main
them, and
ship.
you can see more of them are hanging out there. So it's
Episode
Hmm.
2, 27 minutes and 28 seconds in is where it's at. And I think it looks, I loved it. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh man, that is so cool looking. Just looks straight out of, Aliens, Battlestar Galactica, the 80s, that kind of
Yeah.
total sci-fi design.
Hmm. Yeah, I do want to briefly mention one of the characters, one of the actors on here. The actor is a Scottish actor, Alex Ferns, but the sergeant
Mm-hmm.
on there, like, oh man, I love his character. He's just like so amazing, and then once again, like we're talking about like accents and stuff of Cassian. It's just like his accent. It just like I don't know. It brought something more like to the episodes and to the interactions, just because of his accent, when he was talking, it was him. And like it was his story is really interesting too. And, like I guess, like, loyalty and kind of devotion to his job, and once again, like to his place and everything underneath Karn and like helping him out and things like that. And, like that was really interesting, and like it almost kind of seemed like he was older, so like he has more experience and probably knows better what to do in the situations, but he was still following Karn's direction and trying to make him look good even when he was he was clearly inexperienced in the situation. So yeah,
he's
I think they played that whole thing really well too.
he's an interesting character, but I feel like he's kind of one of those characters that has he almost is almost like those 2 guys at the beginning, except he has the power to do it and the know-how, but he does have a little bit of that.
No,
I kind of want to go to war, and I want to take down, like he's like, oh, we're trying to capture one guy. How many people do we need? 12. Okay. That
Well,
seem
I
a
think
little
that's
excessive?
smart.
yeah, no, that doesn't seem. I mean, when you're watching a cop show and they call for backup, there's a murderer here. We need backup. Do they send 2 more? No, you get a whole unit, man. It's not. you're going after what they believe is a stone cold murderer, right?
Armed and dangerous.
Yeah, armed and dangerous. And you can tell he has experience and respect when he's doing the briefing with the guys. He's like, he may not look dangerous, but believe me, he is. Says something along those lines. He's definitely got the more experience, especially like leading troops in the field.
Yeah,
and that's one thing I really liked. That showed it. There was a lot of characters with strong accents, and I really thought that was interesting. It was they weren't going for perfect English so everybody can be understood perfectly. It was a lot of interesting accents and different. I really liked that.
Yeah, it just shows that there's a greater world out there, especially in the Star Wars galaxy. There's just so many different people from so many different places, and that's what like this episode or this show really pointed out, that there's all these different kinds of people from all walks of life in Star Wars. And but I do think this character, he feels a little more like, you guys talked about his experience, but I thought it was interesting because I feel like he enjoys it a little too much. That's more where I was like, he likes the power. He feels like he enjoys the going to battle and maybe a little bit more of the violent aspect of it. And I think I feel like he expected that kind of level, and that is not what Cyril Karn expected to happen.
Yeah.
He thought 12 people is excessive. We're just trying to get one person. We don't want to disrupt. Because they disrupted the whole city. Oh, there was one line that I think he said that if the people start to get out of hand, remind them that they can file complaints at the monthly town hall meeting. But he said it in like an ominous tone of like, punch them in the face and remind them that they can make a complaint. It was like, show them who's boss. And so it's kind of interesting because then you got like when we talked about Cyril Karn, you could tell he's very pro corporation. The Primilana or Primox Corporation. He's very pro corporation because you can see it in his uniform. Because his chief,
everyone. I really thought that was funny.
He basically bedazzled his uniform.
Well, it's not bedazzled. He just tightened everything up so it looks sharp. If you look at all the other,
he mentions piping, which is the
he
orange
added
on it.
Piping.
He added the pipe. You see that like in car interiors. The different colored piping to make it stand out. That's what he did that to his uniform on top of tailoring it.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious.
Because when you look around and you look at the chief, you look at the other employees, all of their stuff is mostly like baggy. It's not like it's
sloppy.
Yeah, it's a little sloppy, and he's so pro corporation that he tailored up his uniform so it looks proper. That was interesting. I feel like they didn't talk about it, but Linus Mosks, who we've been talking about, he also somewhat does it, although obviously his uniform is a bit bigger. But I still love that he's just like, yeah, let's get it. But yeah, he felt like his uniform was a bit tighter in the same aspect of the same symbolism, basically.
So I think another interesting character, I mean, we already talked about her, but Bix, I think it's a really interesting character, and I feel like, we definitely haven't heard the last of her, what her story is, but it is kind of interesting, like if you just think about the whole situation where, she, however you want to say it, she likes Tim. She likes him enough, I guess, whatever their relationship is, but so you have that situation there, and she takes Cassian's side against someone who she's in a relationship with, So I feel like there's more to that story that we didn't know. And then also the fact that she has, contact with Luthen, right? And she has like, I don't know if I'd necessarily call it like a fear, but she realizes that he's someone very important, and like it's
Mm-hmm.
not someone that you can just like contact and then say never mind. Like it,
Mm-hmm.
somehow she knows more about this situation than for sure Cassian, but even us viewers. She knows more about the situation and how important and how big of whatever you want to call it that he is doing is, shit. So like that was really interesting, like because there's a part when he was like, oh, like, you know something along the lines of like telling her like if you can like call it off or cancel it. He's like, nope, he's already on his way. I'm like, and like it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't some
Mm-hmm.
like she had the look of like, yeah, you don't mess with these people. You say something, like you have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. And his whole character is interesting because their whole conversation with Cassian's not getting the fact that he doesn't really want the box. He's not there for the box. He's there for the
Hmm.
guy who
Mm-hmm.
walked into the Imperial facility and got the box.
Yeah, he was like, I don't even care about the box, to be honest.
Well, yeah, and Cassian tries to go back for it several times, and he's like, don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he was like, oh, I want 40,000 credits. And he's like, I'll give you 1,000 more if you tell me how you got it.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't. He wants to know the truth. He came there looking for someone like Cassian, and
Mm-hmm.
his explanation is so good. They're so fat. They're so
Yes,
satisfied with
that whole
themselves.
conversation was just
So good.
amazing and bone chilling. Like I can listen to it over and over again. They're so fat and happy with themselves. I think someone like me could walk in amongst them, spit in their food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Spits in their
they
food.
think they're so good that they don't they. He's like, basically all you have to do is pretend you belong there, and a
Mm-hmm.
uniform. You need a uniform and to know how to pretend like you belong there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that was just it's just a super interesting conversation, and I really enjoyed that because it really shows again this is the start of the rebellion, and he's looking for people. That's what he needs is, devices can get you can only get you so far, but if you don't have enough people to fight this war that you're wanting to start, you ain't gonna get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just interesting. Like, nope, I'm looking for you. I'm looking for Cassie, and I'm not looking for a box that will basically let me look like an Imperial chip,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was pretty cool too. I was like, oh man, that was interesting, and I thought it was real interesting because obviously it's more like just a device that plugs into the ship that makes the ship read like whatever vehicle that ship was. But he was
It's
saying,
transponder codes, basically.
but yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's what I was gonna say. I think it's kind of like, from what it sounded like, it's like a like a police scanner.
but
So
I
like
thought,
it looks like that to everyone else, but he also said that you can see all of the Imperial ships in a certain amount of radius.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I also thought it was like kind of interesting though the way he put it. He's like, does it even work? He's like, I can't plug it in. It's sealed. Once you unseal it, it loses half its value.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Because I'm sure it's probably only able to be installed once as a
Mm-hmm.
Imperial transponder. So if you started to install it, it would probably not work correctly or as well if you tried to install it into a second vehicle. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just an interesting idea. Just more little tidbits of the Star Wars universe and how ships and ship stuffs work and how the Empire keeps track of everything that they do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an interesting idea. But again, Cassian is not understanding because even when they get out of the building, he's like, "There's only one more, but let's go back in and get it." And so he starts getting shot up, and he's like, they wouldn't send only 4 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And you're like, oh, I sent 12 men after one guy. Well, apparently, even Luthen knew that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, but
Yeah.
this episode, there's so much to talk to. Yeah, kind of how you mentioned, like, Bix, are we gonna get more to her story? Is there anything gonna happen there? Because uh, I really liked how they have the secret communicator, that they know the code, because the father and son that own the shop, they have a code word for them to be able to use, and she just tells them what the object she needs, and he goes, "Oh, it's in the back, way in the back. You might have to dig for it. It might take some time." And then she just crawls through a pile of hoses to climb up the thing to get to the communicator. I thought that was like such an interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
I also
Felt very,
loved,
very rebellious.
yes, I loved how the you call him the drum, but what was the gong,
The drum
The-
beater.
yeah, I love
guy was
how
awesome. He loves his job.
serious he loves his job, how seriously he takes his job with his poses and just the everything. It was,
And he's
that
just
was
like
such-
takes it, and then he's like takes like a deep breath, like, okay, gotta do this like perfect, you know.
and
Mm-hmm.
I loved how when everyone starts to realize that the corporation is there and basically looking for one of them, that the whole community starts banging on anything they can to basically sound an alarm. That was, you've all heard Imperial alarms. That was the town sounding an alarm for
Yeah.
someone. And it was how the whole town is protecting one person just because they know that the corporation don't belong there and they're evil and whatever.
Yeah.
And I loved that's what a reckoning sounds like. That line
Yes.
was so good. Like, you won't like it when
It's
it
when
stops.
it's when it stops. That's when you should fret.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was so good. And then I found it interesting. It's obviously because they probably need him. Cyril Karn. They need him further in the show, and he's got more to do. But I thought it was interesting that they didn't kill him. Even Lutheran's like, I'll kill him.
No, I thought it spoke perfectly to where Andor's at right now, because these guys
Yeah.
are hunting Andor for murder, but Andor didn't want to be a murderer. He
Yeah.
didn't kill that guy on purpose. At least not the first one.
Yeah, not the first one.
And so
And
another thing,
So he's not out there trying to kill everybody. He's just trying to get away from him at this point. So I think it really fits his character of not being so cynical quite yet.
I liked also Lutheran's like, rule number 1: build your exit on your way in.
That was an awesome rule. I thought that
Super
was just
sweet.
that was a great set. Then it blows a hole in the door. That was
And,
awesome.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting too, because you already see him literally training Andor already. He hasn't even told them about a rebellion or anything or what's going on, but he's already training him. Rule number 1. And then rule number 2 was about the comm link. He's like, never go into a room with anything that you can't control.
I was heartbroken when he was trying to talk to B and it was giving him
Right.
away to the corpos. Like, oh man, I love that droid too. I want that Lego already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So Send It says it shows the reputation of the corporation as people. People would rather trust the criminal in their midst than the corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as Samuel Allen pointed out, Cassian never asked for trouble. It just seemed to find him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of interesting. the way the show plays out, because almost like everything that happens in these 3 episodes, Cassian is mostly just reacting to. He's fully reacting to it. None of it is really his choice, and which kind of makes the character progression of what you see in Rogue One all the more better, because you know that going to Scarif was his choice. He chose
Yeah.
to do that. It wasn't him reacting to what he needed to do. It was his choice to do what was right. And so it's just an interesting character building. It's just so
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love how it
Another-
kind of jumps in too, like with all the different characters here. You think about everyone he has like contact with that actually knows him. You think of like
Mhm.
someone like Brazo or Brazos or whatever his name is. Like it's really similar to, like, I feel like Bix and him, and even like
Insulted my choice of
Marva
beverage.
and Clem and stuff like that. They kind of like they know that, you know, like he's a little shadier. He doesn't, you know, yeah, he's getting in trouble, and you know, he's always like, they're like, "What'd you do this time?" type thing.
yeah.
And but at the same time, I feel like all of them help him because they know he has a good heart. It's like one of those people, like he
Mhm.
keeps on getting into trouble, but they realize it's not always his fault, but that he has a good heart. Like, you know, they care about him. It's not like they're like, oh man, like he's always getting into trouble and we hate him. It's like he's always getting into trouble, but we love him type
thought-
situation.
I mean,
Yeah.
at the start of the show, he was caught in maybe a shady area, but he didn't go there to take part in what was for sale there, or he wasn't looking to steal from the corporation. Right? He was looking for
Yeah.
his sister. So
Right.
what did you do now? Well, he started out by trying to find someone he cares about
Mhm.
who
And
might not be in such a good situation.
I thought it was interesting because he's talking with his mom, and she's like, "Who knows you're from Canary, and how do they know that they're looking for someone from Canary?" And he goes,
all right. A canary is a bird. They're from Canary.
"Canary." Okay, my bad. Canary,
Sorry.
Canary.
Tweet,
Canary.
tweet.
Okay, Canary. That she's asking them, how does the corporation know that they're looking from someone? And he's like, well, that might be my fault.
Like I told them.
Basically, because he told the woman at the brothel that who he was looking for someone, so that's how they would have got that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, it's kind of just I like the one line, kind of how everyone knows Cassian, and like and how they all stick up for him. I thought it was funny when Bix is like, what did you do this time? And because he's got the little scrape on his cheek, and he's like, I fell. And she goes, what, on a jealous husband? It's just like, she's even chirping him. It's so funny.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see the relationship, and I kind of, you're right with her. She kind of does feel like she knows that he's more important for some reason, and it almost feels like she is childhood friends with him, as opposed to like Tim is the new boyfriend that they've maybe however long they've been dating, but Tim probably doesn't understand that they have a more special relationship because they're like maybe grew up together. They were kids. And so you kind of stick up for or help a buddy out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and it says burn.
I liked the use of Arabish in this, and
Everywhere.
even like it was interesting to see it like come up on screens. People were reading it, and you either got like it translated for you on the screen, or people were like talking, reading what they're saying, even though it's in Arabic, but they're reading it to each other. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I did watch someone's video who translated it all, and he made the joke of like he was gonna type out what it was, and he's like, "Oh wait, They said this one on screen. They typed it out on screen so you could read it. They translated it for you. It was pretty funny. But this show is such. It is interesting. Like all the people who backed for him. I loved his conversation with Barso. Is it Barso or is it Brasso? How do you say Brasso? Brasso.
Mm-hmm.
His conversation, he's like, "Oh no, you found me at a bar and we went back to your place." And he's like, "You insulted." I liked how he just added to his lie. He's like, "You insulted my choice of beverage and you fell when you were trying to get up out of your chair."
So what he was doing there was Cassian was asking him to lie for him as to where he was. So then Brasso came up with the lie as to why he had the mark on his face.
Yeah, well, and he also came up with the lie as to why he was having that conversation with him in the morning. Why he came to see him in the morning. He didn't come to see him, for an alibi. He came to apologize to him. He's making an excuse for why he was there in the morning as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like all these friends again just shows that people don't trust this corporation that's basically like their overlord.
And he doesn't ever go to work.
Right? I was like
Andor, the name isn't actually his. It's his adopted parents' name. And one thing I thought was interesting was
there's Cassian. His name's Casa.
But it's also
I thought that was a nickname.
His name is Casa, and I'm guessing they change it to try to help hide his identity, just like they gave him the name Andor, because they also changed how they spell it, because Casa is spelled with a K and Cassian is spelled with a C.
Yeah, for some reason I thought it was like the nickname from his little sister.
I think that was just a straight up.
Cassian.
I'm pretty sure that was his Canary name. Was basic.
It was Casa.
It was just Casa.
Well, I don't think they ever said what his birth name was. The only reason we know Casa is because people said it.
Because she said
his sister.
Yeah.
I called my big brother Gaga. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that was his given name.
Okay, but
yes, but
so, come on.
So IMDb credits the kid as playing Casa, Kassa.
Because
that was the only name that was told during the flashback.
Yeah.
But you can also see the relationship or the closeness of Casa to Cassian. There's only a few more letters. and changed from a K to a C. I mean, you can see the relationship there. I'm pretty sure that was his initial name, or at least his Canary name.
Yeah, it's possible.
And it was, but even so, I wonder if he's gonna get that, what he wants, if he's gonna be able to find his sister.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
That's an interesting one. And one thing we know too is that we're in the series now, but we're going to get a whole nother season of 12 episodes as well. And no release date on when that'll be. I'm almost thinking, because I think they've already made them, that it will probably just be sometime next year. Probably keep it about the same time frame, just depending on what else. Well, all other programming.
Probably after Ahsoka, maybe fall into 2024.
Yeah, probably about the same time frame that we're in right now. About a year from now, probably.
So what I've heard is that the last episode of season 2 ends 5 days before the events of Rogue One. So this story we're getting is going to go right up to it.
Just like Rogue One goes right up to A New Hope. That's awesome.
Well, that goes right up to A New Hope by like 30, 40 seconds later.
No, but this show's really got me. I thought it was kind of interesting because in this episode, this one definitely felt like this is the beginning. This is on the ground with the people that really matter in this world that are being oppressed. And we're going to get to more of where the fight is, because we didn't see Mon Mothma everywhere. Everyone knows we're going to see her. We've seen her in the trailers. You've seen her.
Yeah.
You know, they use her as basically the second lead at when advertising the show and talking to the actors from the show. She's basically the second lead of the show. So, but we didn't get any of that in this episode. We only got with the people, with the people that are being oppressed in this world. And so it was really interesting, because if you look at it as the season goes on, it is completely like saying the rebellion literally built from the grounds up, like all the way from the bottom. The bottom is what started it, the people that are being oppressed. You know, it's one thing to be a senator fighting for people who are oppressed, and it's another thing to be the people that are being oppressed. And that's why Luthen is looking for these kind of people that can do the work that needs to be done, who have the motivation to do this.
I really, really love. It's about halfway through the second episode where B2 is just like so sad that Cassian is trying to leave. He's like, why do you need comms? You can just come and tell me. And just begging him not to leave, right? And it's so like heartbreaking. Like I remember just being sad when I was watching this part.
That's another thing. Cassian, again, we see, because we know about K2, but he has a good relationship with droids. And we've kind of talked about how droids are almost like your pets. And you can always tell when someone's like an animal lover, and how the kindness that they show. And this is basically, Cassian shows a special kind of kindness to droids.
He's kind of the opposite of the Mandalorian. No droids.
Yeah, that is interesting. Like the relationships that you build. And I feel like, even, as these, it kind of is like pets, right? Because, by the end, like B2 obviously isn't as functional as he once was, but he's like he continues to like work with him and stuff because he cares about him, instead of just saying, oh, this is a bad droid, I need a new one, I need an upgraded one, like to help me out or whatever. And then he also entrusts the care of his adopted mom into his hands as well, when he's like, take care of her and stuff like that. So once again, it's just showing you
that line when he's going over the comms, he's saying, make sure she keeps the heat on.
Yeah,
that's a line from the first episode. Brazo was saying that when he was over there, it was freezing cold, because I don't know if she's like trying to be frugal with her money or can't afford it, but it was really cold. And he told Cassian to make her put the heat on. Yeah, and so Cassian repeats that later, telling B to make sure that it keeps the heat on for her.
Well, probably because Cassian never goes to work.
Well, no, because he's at this point he's fleeing. He's not going to come back.
And yeah, so I know. I just mean like he probably didn't pay the bills because he never went to work.
I mean,
I don't think it's ever said that he doesn't go to work.
Well, I mean, they
just always getting in trouble.
It seem like, because he said, okay, whenever you do what you need to do, like you need to get back to work.
Yeah,
like that's what he told him. So obviously, and then as like he was doing those other stuff, he obviously wasn't working. So yeah, but
I thought it was interesting because the way this planet works is, it's obviously cold. They're always wearing jackets. You can see their breath numerous different times, but there's no snow around. It's interesting the way this planet. It's just their ecosystem is interesting because obviously it's cold. They talk about it being cold. You can see their breath. They're always wearing multiple layers. But again, like you said, there's no snow or anything. It's almost like,
at least where we've seen.
It would be kind of depressing, honestly, to live in an environment like that. At least like snow usually covers over everything and makes stuff look pretty for a little bit till it, starts to melt and gets sloppy and dirty and gross. But for a little bit, it makes it look all pretty and stuff. And so that's what you get when you're cold. If you have to live in a cold environment where it still just looks like you live, especially for Cassian, in a junkyard, basically.
Mm-hmm. It rained and never snowed. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's always cold enough you can see your breath. You could see how you could get a kind of depressed and down, basically, especially when the Empire is oppressing you like they are. And so it's just another added layer to everything that's going on. Oh, so yeah, this show in general, I'm so excited to continue to see where it is. Like we've seen, I was almost a little disappointed that we've seen so much other stuff that's in episodes to come. I always generally hope that like when they show a trailer, that most of it is in like would have been in like these first 3 episodes, so that you don't see too much more. But it's definitely interesting. I also have noticed that the show is getting great reception on Twitter and social media. That's rare for a Star Wars.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's got great critic scores and audience scores on Rotten Tomatoes. So it people are loving this show, and it's awesome to see everyone enjoy a Star Wars show.
Yeah. I mean, good scores on IMDb as well. I was thinking about that too. Like, like obviously like they kind of fluctuate at the beginning as more critics are able to like put their full review. More, regular people are able to watch it, give their review and things like that. And so I knew a lot of times what happens is it gets to it goes higher at the beginning because you have the people who are going to watch it immediately are people who actually like it, right? And then it's going to kind of filter down to people that have to do it because it's their job, or people that just watch it because they had nothing else to do, like regular people, not critics. But then it kind of comes down a little bit, right? Because you can take out like the passion for Star Wars and the people who love Star Wars, then it starts being like kind of just regular content consumers. And so I knew that was going to happen, but immediately it was like in the 90s. I don't know if you guys saw that towards the beginning, like in Rotten Tomatoes, I was like, man, it's like one of the highest rated, shows, from Disney, to date or whatever at the beginning. It's kind of settled down into the 80s and like 8 point something on IMDb. But either way, like so far, it's been amazing. And I think this is only the beginning. It's going to get better. I think the average consensus is episode 3 was the best. That's how I feel about it. I've read a lot of people feeling the same way. And so I think it moving forward, there's going to be a lot more episode 3s than episode 1. And that, well, that's what I kind of hope. But, and if that is the case, then I think it's just going to people are just going to continue to love it.
I kind of like the slow burn though. Because it makes the moments you get in like in episode 3 when you get the faster moving pace, the more action and everything, and just those slower bits make those the fast parts, the explosions, the action, makes it feel higher stakes. There's so much more at stake during that.
Yeah.
Especially
I think
because
the only problem is we've seen that happen with Boba Fett, and it was horrible, like ratings wise. We loved it because we love Star Wars, but consistently people are saying it was like boring and slow, and it was just a lot of talking, a lot of laying in back to tanks, a lot of just like sitting around talking about stuff that is going to happen, and then nothing happens on that episode. So I think that's the issue with that, is like, the people who love Star Wars are going to be interested in the conversations and interested in the background and what blaster somebody has,
true.
or, well, look at that in the junkyard. That's cool. But the average content consumer, they're going to want to see something happen, not just talking. It's not a drama, like
That's-
where, like someone eventually is, like, oh, that's mysterious, what's going to happen. People want to see Star Wars for action, so there's nothing wrong with a build up to action, like you're saying. But I think, moving forward, if we have another, 2 episodes of just like talking and then a third one of action, I feel like it's going to be the same. Me personally, I'm going to feel the same, like, oh man, it's like we're building up into this kind of cool action. And so I'd rather now start to see, him start doing like little missions here and there, that obviously they're going to involve action. Maybe it's not, blaster fire and whatever his cool staff is battles, but maybe like the suspense, like what we've seen on the trailers of him going undercover. Is he going to get caught, or maybe even hand-to-hand combat, getting out of situations, things like that. But I would like to still see some sort of action in the episodes.
I like your idea there, and I'm kind of thinking almost like for action sequences per se, it would be interesting if they were to do it like the slow way, but put the fast episode in the middle as the middle episode, and then you could see almost the third episode might be a little slower, but you could almost start to get an idea of like the repercussions of whatever mission they went on or fallout that happens from that. I think that I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, it's just like any great written literature. A lot of times it's like that. You have the introduction, so it kind of gets you into the world, into what's happening, and then it builds up into the climax, which is usually, in the middle to like 60% of the story. And then you get all that action. And then once again, like you were saying, then it kind of like, basically tells you, because of all that stuff happening here, here's the repercussions of it. Yeah, I think that would be kind of a great way to sandwich the action if they are going to do these 3 episode arcs and they only have one, super action, filled episode. It, maybe it would be nice to have that in the middle versus, watching like an hour to like an hour and a half of like really slow. Because I watch these at night. Most people watch them when they come out at, midnight, 1:00 in the morning, depending where you're at.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's hard to stay awake and just like talking, it's like, oh man.
Yes. Yeah, that is true. For me, it just depends. I did watch these ones at midnight. So I was super tired the next day.
I thought you weren't going to.
Yeah, I thought you weren't.
Well, you're the one who's like, no, we shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So none of us did, except for you, apparently.
No, I did watch them.
Yeah, but it's only for 9 o'clock. It's only 9 o'clock for you.
Yeah, it's only 9 o'clock in Hawaii, so that was a lot easier for me.
I mean, I didn't. I waited till the next morning. I did it as soon as I woke up. It was the first thing I did. But I totally would have if we were going to watch them together. I would have stayed up late. And Tyler was like, "No, we probably shouldn't. It's super late."
Me and Tyler watched them together, and Quinton was sleeping.
Even though I wanted to, Tyler was like, "Nah, we're not gonna do that."
Well, because honestly, there's a different feeling. I feel like if I was gonna be on with you guys, I would be on my PC, and it's just like I feel like Star Wars should be experienced in the best possible scenario. I mean, so we're not getting movies that we can go to a theater for, but I still think, watching it on your TV with because I have a stereo system and everything, I feel like the first time you watch it should be in like the best possible way you can. And while these headsets are great, I feel like you don't get the boom of the drum that you do from my subwoofer. It just doesn't. You can't get the same feeling, and that's why, like, I feel like Star Wars, at least because we are all watching these shows multiple times now, because we have these discussions, and because we're doing this podcast. But whenever I watch a new Star Wars, I watch it first as a fan. Everyone is. I sit down there and I sit on my couch and I enjoy new Star Wars. I get super hyped and like, that's kind of why I like these weekly things, because once a week I get this super excitement of new Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I like the way I think you should experience it for the first time should be in the best possible way you can.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's
Mm-hmm.
in theaters, whether a new Star Wars in movie theaters, or or on your couch on your TV. It just because it's different the first time viewing. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you watch it the first time, some of this stuff can be lost. The suspense can be lost a little bit, on multiple viewings and stuff, and so you want to
Mm-hmm.
get the most out of that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I prefer to watch generally on my couch. I don't really have, and I don't have a system where I could be able to hear you guys and talking.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But
I wanted to mention in the chat real quick. Kalani said this show does have a different feel than most Star Wars shows, though. Seems like they are trying to reach an audience more our age versus kids. And I 100% agree. We've talked about this a lot. We've talked about, Star Wars from George Lucas being like made for 12-year-olds. And a lot of times that is the case. This season, for sure in this series, I feel like definitely has adult themes in it that kids wouldn't understand for sure. So once again, I mean, basically what you just said, it's proving that it's not for children because it is specifically talking about adult themes that either aren't
Mm-hmm.
appropriate for kids or they just won't even understand it. So, the things that are implied in this, the kind of like the implied sex scene with Bix and what's his Tim.
Tim,
Rest in peace.
Tim with two
but
M's.
yeah, Tim.
Him.
No, Tim. But anyways,
Tim.
yeah. So between those two, and even we had talked about before, but the brothel as well. They didn't need to have that in there. They didn't even need to say what the place was. There was nothing really in there that was like, oh, we have to say it's a brothel. But they made it a point to say that's where it was to make it more seedy, the underbelly, and then the implications. With the corporation later talking about it, like we had
And even the
mentioned
corporation's like,
earlier.
you were not supposed to have that.
Yeah, that shouldn't even be on the planet, right? That's obviously outlawed or whatever it is. It's illegal to have that on your system. So for them to even be allowing it would be an issue to the Empire. So
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. It's long, Tim. That's what sentence says.
I'm sure that's a nickname he wouldn't mind having.
No.
Speaking of adult themes.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, this show definitely is a much darker feel. Someone had mentioned, I think on Twitter, had said more like a Christopher Nolan movie kind of feeling, the more darker, ominous tones. And I do agree, and I like a lot of Christopher Nolan movies, and yeah, it did kind of feel a little bit like that. I'm not gonna read your send your next chat there. I send it.
Well, I mean, it's kind of implied also in the episode.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, like all the stuff they do in the show, like we talked about being darker and more adult. That there's a makeout scene. There's like, there is, yeah, like you talked about, implied stuff going on there, and then what was the other moment?
The curse word.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. There's cursing in Star Wars. And
excuse me, there was cursing in Star Wars before this.
okay,
so-
but if it's coming out from C-3PO, it doesn't, or not C-3, R2-D2, it doesn't count.
No, it's Finn. Finn cursed in The Last Jedi.
What What does he say in The Last Jedi?
It's a big ass door.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I think they're definitely leaning into this on this, which is interesting, you know, like because they could also have thrown in some sort of Star Wars curse word, right? Instead of that,
Hmm.
you know, Carablast, or whatever. What they could have said anything, and you could have, or it's just like on, you know, Battlestar Galactica or anything, like you throw in
Hmm.
a word, right? And everybody understands what it's trying to convey, that it is a curse word,
Parallax.
but it's not an English language, right? So yeah, like moving forward, I'll be interested to see if that continues on and if
I
there's any other words that they throw in there.
I think that you might see a little bit, but I also feel like they don't want to distance themselves too much from Star Wars. Like if you start getting
Mm-hmm.
too adult, it might start to feel a little not like Star Wars. This felt good because it felt like real down with the, like you said, the people that are being oppressed in the galaxy, and so it was a more down to earth kind of, or down to Ferrex kind of feeling. And so, but I think if you get too, not necessarily dark, but I don't think you're going to see too much cursing. Even in this show, there could have been a lot more cursing and other stuff, and they're just not going to get too dark. It's almost like speaking of Christopher Nolan movies, Christopher Nolan obviously made The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. Those are pretty dark movies. But you ever watch them? Especially, there's one uh, special scene in particular that I always think of in The Dark Knight Rises, where it's the police chief is basically brutally murdered. He's supposed to be shot like 6 times, but then they show his body and he doesn't have a spot of blood on him or anything. It's dark, but they're not going to be uh, what's the word? Gruesome or
Gory.
gory. Yeah, it's not gory. And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like that's kind of what you might see here is maybe
Mm-hmm.
something dark. It's not going to be like gory or anything.
Well, yeah, that's true. Actually, if you think about like the first guy, the first officer that died, on an average show or an average movie, you would see, especially in the rain, like the disbursement of like blood from like his head or something like that to
Mm-hmm.
like prove, oh, he is dead. Whereas like this one, like because they left all that out and we only have the guy from the other officer to believe or not believe or whatever, that he knows 100% that he's dead, you
Mm-hmm.
know so like it is kind of like I kind of felt that at the very beginning. I was like, oh, is he really dead? Because there's nothing to 100% prove that he is dead except the other officer
Even Cassian
saying that
said,
he
no, he's
was.
faking.
Yeah. So then it's like, yeah, you kind of left it like, because then the guy's like, no, he really is, he's really dead, he's not faking or whatever. But it's like, yeah, there's nothing visually to see, like you were saying, there was no blood or gore or anything in that scene, which could have proven it to some extent. But yeah.
It's just like I was
Mm-hmm.
saying with the Christopher Nolan movies. You can be dark without being gory or gross or so you can get those kind of dark feelings and you can understand them, but you don't need to necessarily see everything.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that is true. Like we had kind of talked about with, the sexy parts of the show so far. It's like it's all implied or inferred. They don't even, they don't even go so far as to like, show like a scantily clad female or alien or whatever at the beginning, and then later,
Mm-hmm.
like you
Even in
you
the
see
brothel, they
her.
have they're fully clothed, and you're not,
Yeah,
no one's
exactly.
walking around
Yeah, I
with.
felt like they were
Yep.
even. I felt a little more showing that for that kind of stuff and Boba Fett.
Oh yeah, for
When
sure.
he go and collect his money from the casino.
Hmm. Yep. And then the same later, she's like, like in an average show or movie or something, like they're stripping down like fully, maybe if they're not like nude, but they're stripping completely naked. Whereas this one, it's like, she takes off her like jacket and her shoes.
Yeah,
or like maybe her shoes and socks.
That's the sexy take off your clothes in Star Wars is she takes off her jacket.
Yeah. And then like, oh,
and she goes to the
shit.
bed. She goes to the bed to take off her shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like,
oh,
why'd you wear your shoes into the bedroom?
Yeah,
Take off
take
at the
those
door.
off at the door. Dirty.
Savage.
I totally thought that too. It's like, man, she's just tracking all that dirt in, and that's funny.
That's why he like you see his face. He's like upset, and he's like, "Oh man, she didn't take her shoes off again."
Again.
Like, now I have to sweep again. I just cleaned it.
Oh man. Yeah.
So, Send It says that's Star Wars racy.
Yeah.
Taking your shoes off at the bed.
Taking your jacket off when you come inside because you're no longer in the cold.
Well, yeah, that's everybody with like Anakin and Padme. They're like, wait a second, how'd you get pregnant? We never saw that.
Yeah. And so Kaloni says that it makes it like it's still okay for kids to watch, but parents understand. Like you said, like a lot of the stuff, if they probably won't even get that,
Yeah.
or what a brothel is or anything like that. All that stuff would literally just go right over their heads, and so it can be dark without being too.
So this is something that Tyler and I can't answer, but Josiah, are you going to let your kids watch this show?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting one. So anybody with parents or or anyone who is a parent, right, that watches this.
We have parents, but we are not parents.
Everyone has parents, yeah. If you have parents, would you watch it with your mom or dad? That's also another one. Sometimes that gets weird.
Yeah, I would.
Right, depending on the show or movie. No, but yeah, so anyone with kids, anyone who's a parent that's watching this, right? Me and my wife actually kind of talked about this one. Most Star Wars, obviously, since I'm a huge fan, I might have let my kids, watch like movies or shows that were, maybe a little bit too mature for how young they are. But yeah, this one, since I watched it immediately at launch, my wife was like, oh, in the morning, like, would Hezekiah like it? Like my son who's 6, would he like it? Is it good for him to watch? Is it too crazy? Whatever. And I kind of like, I was at the point where I was like, I don't think it would be inappropriate for him to see, or I don't think he'd be scared or anything like that. I just feel like so far, at least on this show, he just wouldn't enjoy it. There's a lot of like just
that's what I was
talking
just thinking
stuff.
as you were talking about it. It feels like it might be too slow for a 6-year-old.
Yeah, I don't
watch
think
the
he'd be
first
able to
5 minutes
sit
and
through
he'll be on his Switch playing games.
100%, 100%. So that is exactly what would happen. He would start watching and be like, "Oh, there's no Darth Vader, there's no lightsabers, there's no shooting, there's no blasters, whatever." Whereas, like, definitely all the cartoons, he's totally into it. But when it's live action, I feel like there has to be action, in it for him to be interested. And like, I think
you should just show him episode 3.
Yeah, he probably like legitimately. He liked Boba Fett as much as I did, but it's because he likes Boba Fett, and so like he's like, oh, there he is, whereas to
Every
me,
time
I'm
you
like,
see
yeah,
him.
he's like standing there, like not doing anything, not talking, and everyone's making fun of it. But like Hezekiah's like, there he is, he's just standing there, but he's all excited just to see him on the screen, and yeah, so I think this one, like, I would be 100% okay, like with my kids, or if someone else said like, could my kids watch it? Yeah, I don't think there's anything to really be weary of so far in the show, but I don't know if they're, depending on their age, if their attention span would be held over the first 2 episodes to even get to the 3rd one.
Yeah, totally being like, oh well, he's on his Switch watching the Clone Wars.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
That's great. This show has been
is
so
Wrecker
good.
in this show?
Yeah.
No?
Where's Wrecker?
I don't care.
That's funny. I'm so excited to see where this show goes from here, because we've obviously seen that it's going to be a darker tone, and it's just so interesting that we're gonna get this darker story of the rebellion, because I mean we already saw it a little bit in Rogue One where, you know, like Saw Gerrera, not a good guy. He's a rebellion,
Yeah,
but
I don't know about that,
I mean,
Look at him in Clone Wars and Bad Batch. He started off as a good guy.
yeah, and I'm not saying, I'm saying he's like
Fighting
on the
the
good
Empire can
side,
change
but
a
he's
man.
not necessarily doing it the right way. You know, he's he more is willing to fight the Empire at any cost. Period. And
Yeah.
the rebellion eventually needs to win, but it needs to do
Bigger
it
battles.
by its principles of why it's fighting.
Yeah.
Because if you fight without your principles like that, you just become what you're fighting anyway. And so you need to fight on your principles, which Saw Gerrera was a bit too radical.
Yeah, and I think the
Even-
rebellion was like that too at the beginning, but
Which
Yeah.
this will be interesting too, because if we get a good amount of him, because in Rogue One, Mon Mothma says that he broke from the rebellion, which means at one time he was part of the rebellion with them,
yeah.
and so it'll kind of be interesting if we can get to see some of that play out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, even like on Rogue One, we have people in the rebellion saying, "Yeah, just commit cold-blooded murder."
Yeah, even Cassian does.
So, yeah, and you know, on orders from the rebellion, you know. So,
Mm-hmm.
Well, even at the start of the movie, he has to shoot his fellow rebel in the back because it was either that or leave him to get tortured and spill the information about the rebellion. So
yeah.
we're gonna see how Cassian becomes that man.
Yeah, I was just thinking right now when we were kind of talking about it, we already seen it like in the trailers and stuff like that. But I think as it progresses and then the Empire is involved in the show, and you know, we get to see like stormtroopers, I think at that point then Hezekiah would be like, okay, I'll watch this, you know. It's like, we get to
Yeah,
like
it's
be
a
on
little-
like an, you know, a base
a
or
little
a ship
slow at
with like
first.
stormtroopers, then he'd probably be like, oh well, that's cool.
You know, I do have a feeling that we're gonna get something that is just gonna have the Twitterverse on fire with trade routes and taxation.
Oh yeah, when we get Mon Mothma in the Senate,
Yeah,
I can't wait to see the Imperial Senate. People are like, I don't
Right.
like taxation and trade routes. I'm like, I can't wait for more taxation and trade routes.
I am same. I completely
Like
agree.
my people are dying. We don't have time to debate this in a committee.
Yes. Yeah, it reminds
Why
me. You
did
brought
you
it up
say
earlier.
it that way, though?
Yeah. Right. I don't know.
This show is
I'm extremely excited for where it goes.
Yeah. I think everybody's
I'm-
like, I think like for sure us three, but I think collectively, I think everybody could, you know, I could probably speak for the majority of Star Wars fans that after seeing the, you know, these 3 episodes and especially the third one, we're just super excited to see where it goes. And I love the fact that they obviously thought about it and they knew what they had, but that's why they wanted us to see the first 3 episodes together.
Yeah, not just the first 2.
They need
Yeah.
to see this third one to be excited about what is to come. And like Obi-Wan was similar. You know, it was
Mhm.
it was really nice that we got to see up to where we did. Otherwise, I feel like, you know, the initial ratings and stuff and like,
Yeah.
you know, consensus of how the show was going to be or what it was would have been not as good as it ended up being.
Mm-hmm.
What I find interesting is because they did 12 episodes, but we're getting obviously the 3 arcs. Would it be? I thought maybe, what if they did something like they said, we only have 4 episodes this season, but don't worry, they're an hour and 40 minutes each.
Mm-hmm.
But because we would have separated it into 12 episodes, we're just going to put them in 3 together, and then we're going to release them like every third week instead of
Yeah,
an
I feel
episode
like,
every week, because
I
kind of
don't
like you
know,
said, you needed that
'cause
third
that's never really
you
been
needed
done
that
before
third
in
arc.
TV.
You needed that
That's
third
true.
arc
A third
and
episode
Yeah.
to
to draw
really
people
catch,
in.
because the first couple were slow, but then you got the payoff.
Mm-hmm.
And
I feel like if it was just the first 2 episodes, then us hardcore Star Wars fans would still be excited to see where it goes. But the more casual viewer really needed that third one to draw them in. So I think it was really
Yeah.
perfect for them to release all 3. And I am like really like, man, I want more than 1 episode next week, right? Like I want it all.
Yeah.
yeah,
I will say, like, I think what they've done, with, dropping like a couple, even if it was like 2, but like 2 episodes or 3 at the very beginning, depending on how the story is, and they realize that, yeah, you need to see a little bit more to be hooked. Like if you're a casual fan, or once again, a lot of people do look to the sites like Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb to be like, oh, should I spend my time with all these thousands of shows and movies that I can watch at my fingertips? Should I waste my
Mhm.
time on something like this? They're going to look and be like, oh, wow, it's rated high. I guess I'll check it out, or whatever it is. Right. And then the other thing to think about too is, a lot of times the end of a season, or, a series will have like a double finale. So
mm-hmm.
like I would like that. I would maybe like to have like 2 or 3 right at the beginning. So just give us a bunch, like, and be like, oh my goodness, there's so much, and this is amazing, so much to talk about. It's so cool. And then maybe like a weekly thing. And then, for the finale, have a like finale part 1 and finale part 2, and just drop both of those. So we get all the last 2 episodes all together, that'd be sweet.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, I feel like you don't necessarily need to do that, just because what you could do is just cut down the episode list and put them into one and make the last episode a longer episode. And I feel like we have gotten that, like Mandalorian season 2. I'm pretty sure like the last episode was it felt like a longer episode and more higher stakes and everything. So that's the thing when you're doing it like Disney, the way they're doing it, because normal TV used to have like a set amount. If it was an hour show, you got 13 episodes a year generally, and half-hour sitcoms were like 24 episodes a season, and that was like the standard. Well, with all the streaming stuff, episode counts vary. Especially all between Marvel and Star Wars. The first season of Mandalorian was 8 episodes. The second one was 9. Obi-Wan was only 6. What Boba Fett was 7. So you're getting all these different lengths, and it's the same on the Disney Plus on Marvel side. All the all the shows are getting different lengths of episodes, or different number of episodes, and so it's just kind of, I say, just take as many episodes and as much time as you need to tell the story. That's all that matters. Doesn't matter if you have one less episode, or there's, it seems like there's too many episodes. You just take the amount, and I kind of feel like this is cut down on what people would call filler episodes. When you can just tell the story that you initially want to tell, when you're not stuck to, like I said, the 13 episode one that TV would, it used to be a normal season for like an hour TV show. When you can just tell the story you want to do, you can cut down on some of those, like I said, what people will call filler episodes.
Mm-hmm. B asked the question if there was any post-credit scenes, because he was in a hurry to watch them all. No, there's no post-credit scenes,
I
unfortunately.
actually didn't.
I would
I
love to see
didn't.
more hidden Star Wars.
I didn't even watch. I generally, my cue to that there's no credit scenes is as soon as the Disney Plus jumps to watch this next. That there's nothing after that generally. unless some people, I haven't seen any place, because even in the Marvel shows, if there's more that are past the credits, they won't jump to watch the next episode until they get to those credits.
Yeah, like on the She-Hulk.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh shoot!
I think
Well,
so.
they have
okay.
post credit. I feel like they have like post credits on every episode. I'm not 100% sure on that, but they have post credits on at least a handful of them.
So, all right. So let's.
Did you read what I said?
Yes.
We'll have to send that to Send It O'Reilly later.
All right. Well, I think we've talked pretty long about this, and there's so much more to dive into on each episode. Some of the moments. I mean, I feel like I could talk a whole episode on just the regrettable misadventures and the need to keep the Empire away from the corporation. Even the corporation doesn't want the Empire. So, I mean, there's so many little aspects. You could probably talk a whole episode on B2 emo.
Yeah.
Like,
I love
yeah,
the little
there's
droid.
so much to dive into, but I think that's a good point for us to kind of wrap up our discussion here. Before we go, if you enjoyed what we talked about or want to talk about it with us even further, go ahead and join our Discord. Also, if you would consider subscribing as well, we could, hit that like button, hit the subscribe. That helps us out. Also, if you want to support us, we do have a Patreon. And also, all of us, like our Twitters are on the screen, but there are also links and other YouTube channels are in the description there if you want to follow us on our other misadventures. Do you got anything going on, Josiah, there on anything special to check out?
Yeah, I don't got much going on. Kind of like I said last week, I'm away from home on work, so not so much going on with Hezekiah's YouTube channel right now. That'll probably pick up once I get back. But yeah, so I would just say, yeah, I think both Tyler and Quinton, they've both been streaming some video gameplay. So yeah, definitely follow them on their Twitters for when they go live, and they're pretty good at games. So I think you'll enjoy watching them for sure, though.
Come for the entertainment, not for the gameplay. And shout out to Send It. He's been in the chat a lot tonight. I know he does streams as well, and so you can check him out. Subscribe to his channel. And thanks to everyone in the chat, to Kaloni, to Samuel Allen. Let's see,
Purple Haze.
And I think that's everyone this time, but thanks to everyone for chatting. It really helps keep the conversations going. We like to know your thoughts as well and discuss them, because everyone has a different opinion on Star Wars, but it's a good conversation. Enjoy having the conversation about the Star Wars and what you liked or didn't like, and it's just fun to talk about it with everyone.
And a special shout out to our Padawan Patreon member, Bruce Togobep. We appreciate the support there, and we hope you listen and enjoy this episode as well.
All right, guys. Well, one thing they didn't mention in this show at all was the Force in any way whatsoever. Kalani wants her shout out. I mentioned you, but Kalani did design all of our logos, and we got more. She's working on more. Got her hard at work, and so Yeah, thank you for all the logos. You can follow her at on her YouTube and Twitch there. Or actually, it's just her Twitter and her Twitch. She generally does a lot of the art. She'll stream it. So go ahead and give her a follow.
Definitely check her out when she does her art streams, like on Twitch. Super cool. I'm not an artist by any means, but I love art. I love any type of art, whether it's painting, sculptures, whatever it might be. But yeah, she does some amazing drawings and paintings. So yeah, definitely check her out.
Sometimes she takes requests. I got her to draw one of the coolest Jedi of all time, Master Plo Koon. So, it happens.
All right, guys. Well, this has been a great episode, and we look forward to talking about episode 4 of Andor next week. All right. Again, like they said, they didn't talk about the Force in any of these episodes, but may the Force be with you.
Always.
Always.
Are you rolling the outro?